There's a reason you can't ignore him. You've seen him before in clips, debates, interviews.
Depression or sadness is a cure-all excuse for men to use for failure.
People argue with him, disagree with him, even try to avoid him, but somehow they keep watching, even when they don't want to. So what's going on here? Because this isn't just about Andrew Tate. It's about something far more powerful. The ability to capture attention.
The release of Andrew and Tristan Tate, right-wing influencers charged with rape, human trafficking, and other crimes.
And once someone understands how that works, they become impossible to ignore. And once you see it, you start noticing it everywhere. In people, in media, and even in yourself.
The Tates, who are major players with big social media followings in the so-called manosphere, are facing criminal investigations in Romania and criminal charges in the UK for alleged...
There's a reason you keep seeing him. It doesn't really matter where you go online. Whether you're scrolling through short clips, watching interviews, or passing through debates and podcast moments, his face seems to appear again and again across different platforms and conversations. And it doesn't happen occasionally. It happens constantly. One moment you're casually scrolling through your phone, and the next moment another clip appears, another debate, another segment from a conversation that somehow keeps spreading across the internet. You might not even remember searching for him, and yet somehow the content keeps finding its way back to you. You might agree with what he's saying. You might strongly disagree. You might even try to avoid his content completely. But despite that, something interesting still happens. You stop for a moment, maybe only for a few seconds, just long enough to understand what's being said before moving on. But that brief pause is often enough, because attention doesn't usually happen all at once. It builds slowly through small amounts. A short clip here, a reaction video there, another passing conversation that pulls you back in. And before long, one voice begins to appear again and again in the stream of everything you watch. Not necessarily because you searched for it, because the system keeps bringing it back. And that pattern raises an interesting question, because in a world where millions of voices are competing for attention every single minute, very few people ever reach that level of visibility. Most voices disappear almost instantly. A few break through for a moment, but only a small number seem to stay there. Their clips circulate repeatedly. Their arguments are debated. Their words are shared, criticized, defended, and repeated again. And eventually, you start to notice something. It isn't just that people are watching, it's that people are reacting. Some support what they hear, others strongly push back, but both reactions create the same outcome: more attention, more conversation, more visibility. And slowly the discussion grows larger than the person who started it. At that point, the conversation isn't really about agreement or disagreement anymore. It becomes about attention. And attention in the modern world is one of the most powerful forces there is, which leads to a deeper question, because this doesn't happen to everyone. Thousands of people try to start conversations every day. Most disappear without leaving any impact at all, but a small number of people break through the noise completely. They dominate the conversation, they dominate the feed, and whether people like it or not, they become impossible to ignore. So how does that happen? How does one person break through millions of competing voices? And more importantly, why does it feel like you can't escape it? Because once you understand how attention actually works, you begin to realize something. This isn't random, it's a pattern. And once you see that pattern, you start noticing it everywhere. What's happening here isn't accidental. The internet isn't just a place where people share ideas. It's a system that constantly measures one thing above everything else: attention. Every second that someone watches a video, pauses on a clip, leaves a comment, or shares a reaction, the system records it. Those signals tell platforms what people are paying attention to, and the system responds by pushing that content to even more people. It's a feedback loop. The more attention something receives, the more visible it becomes. And the more visible it becomes, the more attention it continues to generate. Over time, this creates a powerful effect. certain voices begin to rise above the rest. Not necessarily because they are the most accurate or the most thoughtful or even the most widely agreed with, but because they are the most engaging. Content that sparks reactions spread further than content that simply informs. A calm statement might be noticed, but a strong opinion creates discussion, and discussion creates attention. That's why the most visible figures online often share one common trait. They don't just speak, they provoke responses. Every reaction, agreement, disagreement, criticism, debate feeds the same mechanism. It pushes the content further. And once that cycle begins, something interesting happens. Visibility starts to compound. A clip spreads, then another clip appears, then reactions to clip appear. Soon the original voice is no longer just speaking to an audience. The audience is speaking back, and every one of those responses expands the reach of the original message. This is the moment when attention stops behaving like a simple resource. It starts behaving like momentum, and once that momentum builds, it becomes incredibly difficult to stop because the system isn't designed to slow attention down. It's designed to amplify it, which means the figures who generate the strongest reactions don't just participate in the conversation, they dominate it. And that's why certain people begin to appear everywhere, not because they control the system, but because they've learned how to trigger the reactions that the system rewards the most. And once someone understands that dynamic, they can command attention in a way that most people never will. Once you start paying attention to how this system works, something interesting becomes clear. The people who dominate attention online often share the same set of traits. It's almost as if there's a formula behind it, not a script, not a secret strategy written down somewhere, but a pattern of behavior that consistently produces the same result. The first element is certainty. People who command attention rarely sound unsure. They speak with absolute confidence, delivering their ideas as if they are obvious truths rather than opinions open to debate. Confidence has a powerful effect on an audience. Even when people disagree with what's being said, the clarity and conviction behind the message makes it difficult to ignore. The second element is simplicity. Ideas that spread online are rarely complicated. They are direct, memorable, and easy to repeat. A complex argument might be thoughtful, but a simple statement travels much faster. The easier something is to understand, the easier it is to share. The third element is conflict. Attention thrives on tension. A strong opinion invites a reaction. A controversial statement creates discussion, and discussion spreads content further than silence ever could. Every disagreement becomes another layer of visibility. The fourth element is repetition. The same ideas appear again and again across different interviews, different clips, different conversations. At first, it may seem repetitive, but repetition has a powerful effect on attention. The more often people hear something, the more familiar it becomes. And familiarity makes ideas easier to remember. When these elements combine, certainty, simplicity, conflict, and repetition, something powerful begins to happen. The message spreads, clips circulate, reactions multiply, and slowly one voice becomes part of the larger conversation happening everywhere. This is why some individuals begin to dominate the attention landscape. It isn't just about what they say, it's about how their message interacts with the system that distributes attention. And once that interaction begins to build momentum, the result can be overwhelming visibility. The person becomes a constant presence in the feed, in discussions, and in debates across the internet. At that point, the attention isn't just coming from supporters, it's coming from critics as well. And both reactions feed the same cycle, which means the person at the center of that conversation becomes something unusual, not just popular, but unavoidable. At this point, something important becomes clear. This pattern isn't unique to one person. If you look closely, you start seeing the same dynamic appear in many different places, often with completely different types of figures. Donald Trump dominated attention for years, not simply because of the positions he took, but because every statement seemed to generate reaction after reaction, pushing the conversation further each time it appeared. Elon Musk commands attention in a different way, but the result is similar. A single message, a single comment, or a single post can quickly spread across the internet, creating discussion that travels far beyond the original source. Even in culture and entertainment, the same pattern appears. Kanye West has repeatedly become the center of global conversation, not only because of his work, but because the reactions surrounding his words and actions expand the conversation far beyond the original moment. In each case, the details are different, the industries are different, the ideas are different, but the mechanism is the same. A statement creates attention, attention creates reaction, reaction creates more visibility, and visibility creates even more attention. Once that cycle begins, the conversation grows larger than the person at the center of it. Supporters amplify the message, critics amplify it even more. Media coverage expands it further, and soon the individual who started the conversation is appearing everywhere at once, not because everyone agrees with them, but because everyone is responding to them. This is the moment when attention stops behaving like a limited resource. Instead, it starts behaving like gravity. Everything nearby begins to orbit around it. Discussions, reactions, arguments, commentary, all of it begins to revolve around the same central figure. And once that happens, something interesting takes place. The person at the center of that attention becomes more than just a participant in the conversation. They become the conversation, which explains why certain names seem impossible to escape. No matter where you go online, the same clips appear, the same debates unfold, and the same arguments repeat across different platforms and audiences. Not because the internet is trying to show you one specific person, but because attention itself is pulling everything toward the same focal point. And once you understand that, something else becomes clear. This isn't really about Andrew Tate. It isn't about politics. It isn't even about specific opinions. It's about the way attention works in the modern world. And the people who understand that dynamic better than anyone else are the ones who become impossible to ignore. By this point, the pattern becomes difficult to ignore. Certain voices rise above the noise, not simply because of what they say, but because of how their words interact with a system designed to measure and amplify attention. And once you understand that system, something else becomes clear. It isn't just shaping the people who dominate the conversation, it's shaping everyone else too. Every time you pause on a video, even for a few seconds, the system records it. Every time you react, comment, or share a clip with someone else, the system interprets that action as a signal that says, this is worth showing again. And the more those signals accumulate, the more the system responds by pushing the same content to new audiences, expanding the conversation further. Over time, this creates an environment where attention becomes the most valuable resource online. Not information, not accuracy, attention. The people who understand how to generate it gain an enormous advantage, because once attention begins to concentrate around a single voice, everything else starts to follow. Media coverage expands the reach, reactions amplify the message, and the conversation continues to grow. But there is another side to this dynamic, because while certain individuals learn how to command attention, the rest of us are learning how to respond to it. We pause, we react, we engage, often without realizing that those small moments of attention are the very signals that keep the system moving. And that raises an interesting question. If attention is the force driving the entire system, then who is really in control of it? The person speaking, or the millions of people who decide, even for a moment, to stop and watch? Because once you start thinking about attention this way, something changes. You begin to notice how often your focus is being pulled in different directions, how certain voices dominate the conversation, how certain ideas seem to appear everywhere at once. And once you see that pattern, it becomes impossible to ignore, not just in the people who command attention, but in the way attention shapes the world around you.